Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Stacy Braack. I'm a partner with Blue Pearl Consulting and I'm here with Joel Freimuth, our CEO.
Hi Stacy. We're really excited to be speaking with you today. As a matter of background, Blue Pearl Consulting is a boutique management and operations consulting firm headquartered in Chicago and serving clients across North America. Through our proprietary methodology, which we call IRPDM, we're really good at creating sustainable bottom line improvements for our clients. And today we're talking about something really important and something that's on every company owner's mind, and that is how to fire your customer and why to fire your customer.
Right, Joel. And okay, we're going to call them the good, the bad, and the ugly for today. So let's talk a little bit about how you differentiate your customers. The first is the good group, and the top 20% of your customers can account for up to 300% of your profits. Then you have that big chunk of middle customers, about 70% that you break even on, and then you've got the ugly group, that bottom 10% that can account for up to 30 to 40% of your revenue and are completely unprofitable and eat into that 300% that is generated by the good.
I think one of the things that's really impactful for me is looking at this graph of $100 of revenue. If I can get rid of that bottom 10% of customer base, my profit will go up 5 times.
That's dramatic. That's very, very dramatic. In a survey of 38 executives from 32 companies, 90% of these folks have considered firing their customers, and 85% of those have already begun letting customers go.
And I think that coincides with experiences we're having both with our client base as well as internally. You're constantly evaluating your own processes. And some of that comes with just, I am tired of working with these people.
Right. And in another survey of 236 customers, almost a quarter of them had been fired in the past 12 months.
And when you look at why somebody's been fired, there are some really common reasons that go across industry, that go across factory size or client bases. A bad customer affects employee morale, so they're just not as productive. You've changed your business strategy. Right. You're now serving this customer base as opposed to that customer base. And following that strategy, then you've reconfigured your warehouse, or you've reconfigured your factory process, your manufacturing process. And so some of these clients have probably intentionally fallen away. And some of the clients just continue to suck resources at a point that they're just very consciously eating away at your profits, and that's very, very painful.
So what you're saying is that it's not always just the revenue side. It's not always just who pays the highest price. It's all those internal structure pieces.
No, and in fact, it's rarely the revenue side, because one of the reasons that this webinar is important for you is that we know this is scary. We know firing your customer is really scary because of the revenue that you're going to forego while you're looking for other customers. But having a bad customer up and down your organizational chart is painful and costs you in a number of different ways, which we'll examine after we identify some of the different ways that customers can be such an absolute pain.
And as we go through these types of customers, we hope you all have a little bit of fun identifying in your head or even out loud who these customers are. You've got them, and we know you've got them. First, we've got the haggler, the one that always wants the lower price, the one that's always negotiating their price.
This is the person who ties up valuable personnel, your sales staff, your manufacturing, the person who's going to coordinate manufacturing, and once it's there, it is so hard to remove. And if other customers find out, then you've got a whole other issue.
Exactly. So the next one is the delinquent, and the delinquent is the one who always pays well beyond the time that it's due. And they don't pay extra for that. It's a free loan to them.
It's not only a free loan, this is something we saw a ton of towards in 2008, 2009, 2010, and now it's almost accepted as the norm. Mm-hmm. And it may not be an acceptable norm for your operation.
It really takes away your ability to do what you want to do for your company with your capital. It puts your capital in your accounts receivable, and that's not where you want it.
Which increases your cost of doing business. It increases your cost of borrowing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the next one we've got is the Inventory Bandit. And this is the customer who wants you to maintain a very high level of inventory, whether it's raw material components, whether it's straight raw materials, or whether it's finished goods. But their ordering pattern is such that you have to tie up capital in inventory of some sort for this customer.
This kind of customer has become really popular lately. I kind of blame the emergence of the Toyota way and just-in-time manufacturing, because somewhere down the line somebody is sitting on a bunch of inventory, and it doesn't work in every manufacturing model. So where you have the Inventory Bandit, you've got a number of costs, from the very explicit of tying up capital to the more hidden, just how much space do I have to play with in my warehouse, because when is this guy going to come and take his order?
Exactly. So then we've got the quick draw, and this is the customer that wants delivery immediately. They want their order at the top of the list every single time, which obviously has a huge impact on customers that fall behind that order.
And sometimes this person can be fixed internally, as we'll discuss, but this is the one who has no respect for lead times, has no respect for your manufacturing process or your execution process, and that can have a damaging effect on the employees, and it can really get your operation out of whack.
And this is the one that really, really has an impact, a widespread impact on a lot of your customers. If they are continually promised a delivery time and they are bumped down, they come to expect poor service from you, and that's not what you want, obviously.
The final category that we'll look at today is the Deal Wrangler. And the Deal Wrangler is insidious for a number of reasons, but he's the one that I don't like the most, because he doesn't recognize, the Wrangler doesn't recognize the value that you're bringing to the table. And so they sort of get into the deal, you get pretty far in, and then they renegotiate the terms, and it's delivery, or it's price, or it's this, or it's that. And what's interesting about this bad customer to me is that most of the time lost is lost internally as you change work instructions. If you didn't think about that, if you weren't aware of that and you become aware of that, and all of a sudden you're thinking of all of the time lost because this person keeps coming back to you saying, oh, well, I want to change this, I want to do this, I want to do this.
So as we've just gone through all of these different types of customers that can cause you issues, what I think you've seen is that this is not an accounting issue. This is an operational issue. This is identifying the customer that actually causes your operation to become inefficient.
And I think that in summarizing these four, what should be pointed out is that most customers have some degree of this. This is not a black or white issue, that everybody exists on the spectrum of gray.
Right.
And so you have to take it on a one-by-one basis. But having said that, when you identify somebody who really fits into the camp of one of these profiles, you really need to consider firing them.
Right.
And just to summarize what we mean by all of them fit into the spectrum at some point, we've put together 2 customer profiles. They each have some degree of haggling or changing orders or demanding lead times and whatnot. And yet there may be very good reason to keep both of them. There may be very good reason to get rid of both of them. There is no right answer for a generic audience.
And if you look at these examples in a little more detail, on the surface, on each line in there, you can determine which customer is best by individual component, but you have to look at the aggregate of how that customer behaves and how they behave in relation to your operation. You cannot separate the two.
And what other value you get. We at Blue Pearl, we have a 3-pronged decision for going to work for a client. The work has to be interesting, the work has to be important to the client, and we have to enjoy the other's company. Since we're going to be really working hard, you want, we encourage every customer to look at some sort of model for evaluating, should I take this customer?
Right. So one of the things you really want to do is make sure that you can measure, and developing the metrics on which to kind of prioritize your customers can be a difficult exercise. So if you look on the left-hand side of this table, you see that you've got some direct costs that are a little bit easier to measure, but application or distribution onto your customers can be really tough. And then the hidden costs, your reputation. How do you measure the impact on your reputation? That's a tough one.
Although it's tough, it is really worth trying to do this, either engaging in an exercise yourself or being led through the exercise, because we all know that there's a hidden cost to employee turnover. And turnover comes from low morale, and turnover comes from lack of productivity.
Right.
And so this is just one category. Customer satisfaction leads to more customers, and certainly opportunity costs are things you can be doing with your time. So once you have put a number on that, albeit it's not easy to measure, and we recognize that, it's time to take some action.
Absolutely.
So you've now gone through and you've evaluated your customer base. You've categorized them, and now you've put cost to them, and so now, if we go back to that first categorization, they're the most profitable customers. Fine. The next section, the ones that we're breaking even on, that middle 70%, we now have enough knowledge to look for ways to improve them, and that are either price-driven, process-driven, something. But now we've got the bottom customers, and that's the one we want to focus on for just a few more minutes. So, how to fire the customer. I think this is the meat of it. And now we're getting into some nervous territory, right? Before you fire, because we know you don't want to, even though it's the best decision, and we know you'll feel better after you do, we have some steps to one last checklist, as it were.
Right, and the real point of this checklist is to see if the relationship is salvageable. Can you make them profitable? Before you fire them, can you change your relationship with them? Can you change the value that you give them and that they give you to make it work? And so the first place to look is internally. Can you improve your internal processes? Can you reassess the relationship and look at what you do to make it work?
And after you've done that, it's time to have a conversation with the customer.
This is hard.
Yeah, and people don't like confrontation, and this doesn't have to be confrontational, but it does have to be a direct conversation. It can either be phrased in, our ideal client relationships work like this, and this is the gap between our ideal relationships and our relationship with you. Alternatively, it can be, we need you to do this, and if you're incapable of doing this, we have to end the relationship.
Right, right.
Which gets to, really the measurement and the identification of the value proposition. How much is that client worth? Can you make them more profitable? Most likely, after the first two conversations, you know the answer to that. Which brings us to the final, which is either migrating the customers to different organizations or terminating the relationship completely.
Right. And it's a hard one, but if you've taken all the steps to evaluate what you can and can't do, you'll know when the time is right to let them go and to move on.
And having just let two customers go, it actually feels awesome when you're no longer dealing with those problem clients. And we find ourselves with not just excess capacity, and yes, we still have, and we know that most do, have the fear of the missing revenue. But with the excess capacity, we know who we're going after better.
Because we've identified the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
We know who the good customers are, so we know how to target our business development and our sales efforts.
Which puts us in a much more powerful position. And whereas before, when we were being intentional, most of our customers would tell us when we're being intentional, the sales process is longer because it takes longer to penetrate the market. But now, having just gone through this exercise, they know exactly what type of relationship they're looking at. And it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process to replace that revenue. And once you've gotten rid of a problem client, you don't just have excess capacity on the manufacturing floor or in the process. Your sales staff, your account managers have excess capacity as well. and their morale is up.
Right,
So all around, it's a win-win.
right.
And then obviously internal operations can get back on track and be more standardized to maximize efficiency for your current customers, which will increase customer satisfaction and help to maximize, help to minimize those hidden costs that we identified
Right.
earlier.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd like additional information, we are Blue Pearl Consulting, and we are at bluepearlconsulting.com, and our contact information is available for you at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
And we know that this is tough. We know that it's scary. So give us a call, and we'd be happy to walk you through this again. Thank you.